we don't need roads.
Miss Hall, first of all, so good to see you.
You too.
Congratulations on the nominations this morning.
Thank you.
I would imagine now that you have so much experience behind the camera, you know what it takes to look at a film through the perspective of a director. Which of your past films do you now see differently? Because you can look at them and go, damn, that may have not been as easy as I thought it was.
That's a funny question. I mean, all of them, and also, no, not really. I don't really see them any differently. I mean, honestly, I think I always approached acting a bit like a filmmaker. I always took great pleasure in, secretly cutting the movies in my head while I was on set. And then I would sort of play this game with myself of sort of trying to work out the shots and what the director had composed and how that would cut together, and then I'd be like, I think this is what the movie is going to turn out to look like. And then of course I'd go and see the film and go, well, it looks nothing like the movie that I had in my head, because everyone's different.
Sure. What's the closest where you were like, yeah, that's exactly what I imagined?
Oh no, I don't have one. There's not
Really?
a single one of those.
That's how different
no.
they were.
Well, it's just, I think that's just what makes different directors different.
Sure.
It's like you have a different relationship with the movie in your head.
That's incredible. And what an incredible variety of directors that you've worked with.
Yes.
I have to admit, I was a little embarrassed after having seen the film because of my ignorance of just the concept of passing as it's presented in this film.
Right.
And then I know the maternal side of your family is
Yes.
African American. I'm sort of
Yes.
curious what your own relationship with the concept of passing was before this film as you were growing up.
Well, don't feel embarrassed. I was the same way. Before I read this book 13 years ago, I didn't have a word for what my own grandfather did. And that's partially because any stories of passing in any family are necessarily hidden and obscured, and a big component of that occurrence is that a history gets erased. So you pass on a sort of a legacy of denial to your children, and then that denial gets passed on to me. So I didn't have anything. I didn't have language. I just had rumor. And reading this book was sort of confirmation and context for me. And I understood what my grandfather did in relation to this book. And then I spent 13 years trying to get to the bottom of all the mysteries of his life, which I'm now very happy to say that I have.
That's incredible. I think our first interview may have been 13 years ago, for around Frost Nixon time. Was it around the time that would have?
Yeah, that would have been about right.
That's crazy to think that that's the journey that you've been on.
That's when I wrote the first screenplay.
That's unbelievable.
Well, I thought it was 13 years ago, and then I came across someone in London who was the little brother of my boyfriend at the time, who said, I read your first draft in 2006.
Wow, so pre-prestige.
I was like, what? Okay, I guess it was even longer than I thought.
That's unbelievable. Whenever it was announced that you were going to adapt this novel, did you get any pushback from people who did not know your family history?
I wouldn't say explicit pushback. I think there was discomfort. And I think the conversation around who has the authority to make certain kinds of art is a very complex one. And I think there was nerves and concern until I was able to tell them that I had a specific history that related to passing in my family.
I know that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you gave Ruth the option of which role she had wanted to play. If she had chosen the other role, how different of a movie would this have been, and would you still have been able to bring Tessa on? Like how?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, part of the casting process of casting these two women is, they are two characters who are on some level purposefully built to ensure the other one's destruction. And part of that is their similarities are as present as the things that repel them, that are different about each other. They had similar options in life and they picked antithetical paths. And there is this sort of attraction and a sort of all the kind of tension in the movie comes out of that thing. So in a way, when I was casting it, something in my head that I always thought about was, on some level, if this was a piece of theatre, for example, they would have to be able to switch parts night by night.
That's so fascinating. It gives me so much anxiety thinking about that.
Yeah, I know. So it was always like, it was always a bit like they're completely different characters, but they have to contain the other one in them, if that makes sense.
That's
so
amazing.
And I think there is a version of the movie where they could have been playing each other's parts. Absolutely.
That's incredible. As we wrap up, I want to talk about filming in black and white. As a storyteller, as a visionary, you're picturing what the story is. What is the balance of the symbolism of literally taking color out of a story about race versus it just looks beautiful.
Well, yes, it does look beautiful. I'm not immune to that. And it was actually very conscious that it looks beautiful, not for beauty's sake, so much as something that I spoke about to all of the heads of department and all of the cast was everyone in this movie has to be passing for something. And that includes the film itself. Like, it has to be passing for cinema on some level, or in dialogue with a performance of its own cinema-ness. So that beauty, which is just on the knife edge of self-consciousness, is deliberate. You know, it's performing itself, and it's in dialogue with movies from different periods, and that's the thinking behind that.
It's funny, I saw it obviously in a widescreen format, but even though just seeing it in 4:3 in black and white, I know the book, if correct me if I'm wrong, is from the 1920s. It made me feel like I was in a movie theater in the 1920s watching them having adapted.
I mean, it's funny. It's sort of a byproduct of black and white and 4:3 that it does have this sort of historical feeling, but it's not actually my reasoning behind doing it. I mean, it's a nice byproduct. The reasoning is, this is a film about categorizations and the limits of those categorizations, and how actually there are very few binaries in life, and there are very few black and whites. And the great irony about black and white film is it's not black and white, it's gray, just like life. And also the 4:3 is about restriction and imprisonment and, again, boxes. I mean, I literally put them in a box.
Oh, the film nerd in me is going nuts right now. This was amazing.
There's a lot of film nerd stuff to chew on.
You're incredible. It's always such a pleasure chatting, and it's so nice to not see you in a Zoom box.
Yeah,
it's so great to actually do this in person.
Too.
Seriously,
I know, absolutely.
Congratulations on this. Congratulations on the nominations.
Thank
and it's
you.
an honor to be able to speak. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.